Since starting this channel about 9 or 10 months ago, the two most popular questions I get asked regarding my channel is, hey, what is your favorite Linux distro and what is your favorite desktop environment or window manager? I get asked those questions on almost every video I make. And to save myself a little time and not have to keep answering the same question over and over again, let's discuss it. So what is my favorite Linux distro? Well, what is your favorite Linux distro? I mean, what makes a Linux distro someone's favorite? Well, first of all, your favorite Linux distro will vary depending on your use case. Exactly how are you using this computer? Is it a business workstation? Is it a web server or an email server? Is it a media center? Is it a gaming PC? What exactly is your particular use case? Use case dictates the distros that are appropriate for you. Thus, also going to dictate what becomes your favorite distro. Also, static release versus rolling release. Depending on your use case, if you need something that's rock solid stable, for example, you want a distro that follows a static release model rather than a rolling release model. Now, if you are a tinkerer, if you are a developer, a Linux enthusiast, somebody that likes to play with their system, a rolling release model makes a lot of sense. Desktop environment also plays into your choice as far as favorite Linux distribution. Some Linux distributions focus on one particular desktop environment over all others. So, for example, if you're really into the Cinnamon desktop and follow the development of the Cinnamon desktop environment, you probably want to be on Linux Mint. If you are a Budgie fan and want to follow the development of the Budgie desktop environment, you probably need to be on Solus. If you were a big fan of Unity, back in the day, Ubuntu was where you had to be to run Unity. If you follow the GNOME shell, follow GNOME development, Fedora is probably the distro for you. So desktop environment does play into a decision as far as what distro you use, what becomes your favorite distro. Other things to consider. What is the support network like? Is the community friendly and helpful? So think about things like support forums, their web forums. Think about their IRC chat channels or their Stack exchanges or mailing lists, whatever, all the various support networks that they have. Is the community around those friendly? Are they helpful? Do they give you timely responses? Are their responses accurate? All right, do the repos contain the software I need? That is a huge question as far as for somebody like me. I want all the software I need in the repos. I want big, full repos that have everything that I could possibly be looking for. I don't want to have to compile anything from source. I don't like going out and building things from source. So big repos are a big plus, in my opinion. Also, does the distro have plenty of mirrors? I have reviewed a handful of distros on the channel where they had very, very few mirrors, like 1, 2, or 3 mirrors sometimes, and nowhere close to me in particular. And installing software through their package manager took forever. The download times were slow, very slow, and it takes forever to install packages and even worse to update the entire system. So the last 2 points on this list are probably the big points for me. Do the repos contain the software I need, and are there plenty of mirrors? Most of the other stuff doesn't affect me as much, like desktop environment. That doesn't play into my decision at all because I don't use full desktop environments. I use minimal window managers that I config myself, so I really don't care what desktop environment or window manager a distro ships with. But for most Linux users, desktop environment's a big one. Also, the support network's a big one for most people. Not as big for me because I'm my own support network. I rarely go to any of these web forums or IRC chat channels looking for help. I usually find my own answers. But for most people, those are big points for me. Do the repos contain the software I need, and are there plenty of mirrors? And you know what? That leads me to my answer. What is my favorite Linux distro? Well, I'm going to give you two, because I can't narrow it down to just one. Debian and Arch. There you go. Why Debian and Arch? Well, the repos. Debian has huge repos. Everything I want is either in the Debian repos. If it's not, because Debian and Debian-based distros are so insanely popular, chances are, if it's like closed source proprietary software, if they make a Linux package at all, they probably make a Deb package. They make a Debian package for it. So Debian, I can get everything I need installed on Debian. Arch, the same. The Arch repos are big. If it's not in the Arch repos, there's a very good chance it is in the Arch user repository, the AUR. And because of the AUR, Arch probably has more packages available for me than Debian even. But both of them pretty much have you covered as far as software. Now, do you want to run mainline Debian or mainline Arch? I do. But for newer users, I wouldn't recommend either Debian or Arch to the new Linux users. But you know what? We do have a lot of Debian-based and Arch-based distros out there. Some of them are a little friendlier for the new user than others. For example, Debian. You want something easy to use, Debian-based? Of course, Ubuntu. Linux Mint, Elementary, Peppermint, MX Linux. Love that distribution. Arch. Want an easier way to get into Arch? I don't recommend any Arch-based distros for the brand new user, but if you've been using Linux a little bit, Argos, not my favorite. I've had problems with it in the past, but a lot of people swear by it. You might also want to check out Swag Arch if you like XFCE. If you like OpenBox, check out Arch Labs. Arco Linux is becoming very popular right now, and you have a number of different desktop environments and window managers to choose from with Arco, so definitely check those out. But if you got to nail me down, the two distros that stand out above the crowd, in my opinion, Debian and Arch Linux. That leads us to the next question. What is my favorite manager? When people ask me that, my immediate response is, have you been watching my channel? Because if you have, a lot of my early videos really centered around the OpenBox window manager. Love the OpenBox window manager. It's light, it's fast, has no dependencies, highly configurable. I mean, you can do everything in OpenBox. You can make it do some pseudo tiling. It has dynamic menus, what OpenBox calls pipe menus, where you can write bash scripts or Python scripts that output to that right-click OpenBox menu. OpenBox, I can't say enough good things about it, so if you have to pin me down on a favorite desktop environment or window manager, my answer is always going to be OpenBox. But I can live in anything. I've lived in a lot of different desktop environments and window managers in the past. I've used Awesome Window Manager, lived in it for a few months. I've lived in Xmonad for a few months. Here on the channel recently, I've lived in Qtile. I'm living in Qtile right now. Early on in my Linux desktop career, I lived in GNOME 2. I've lived in Unity, really love Unity on small screens like laptops. I lived in KDE briefly here at the beginning of this channel. You guys know I did a KDE challenge where I lived in Plasma for a little bit. I would be fine, though, running any desktop environment or window manager. XFCE, fine. LXDE, LXQt, Enlightenment, Fluxbox, i3, you name it. I can get work done in any desktop environment or window manager. So I'm not a desktop environment or window manager snob. You got to pin me down. OpenBox is my favorite, but really any of them will do. And again, if you got to pin me down on a favorite Linux distribution, Debian or Arch. I mean, there you go. Now, before I go, I do need to do a special thanks to all my patrons, all my Patreon supporters. Ansem, David, Carlos, Chuck, Daniel, Brian, Leor, AK, Ron, Mr. Neely Pops, Bart, Robert, Marcus, Dan, Mr. Smarty Pants, Swami, Ben, Humade, Keith, Dan, Michael, Tony, Bruno, David, Silvio, Omar, John, Carl, Greg, Christian, Rob, Matt, Mark, Tiedemann, First Stephen, Second Stephen, Third Stephen, Eduardo, Alex, Jake, Benjamin, Marcus, Interceptor, First Paul, Second Paul, John, Tubella. You guys rock. You guys help make this show possible. Peace, guys.